guys, it's Kevin with Spirit of Twilight. I am going to talk to you today about making candles. Now, this was a request by a follower on X or Twitter, whatever you'd like to call it, but I've never actually talked about making candles before, and they wanted to know more about the process. Well, that has to be one of the most difficult topics to talk about. And the reason being is because of different temperatures, different types of waxes, different brands of different types of waxes, brands of fragrances, fragrance oils, essential oils, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Okay, so we're going to talk about first the type of wax. Now, there's several different type of waxes that you can choose as far as making your candles. And some of the most common type of waxes that you can purchase to make candles are soy, coconut, paraffin, and beeswax. Now, beeswax is not a vegan product, and some people will appreciate the fact that you're using a vegan product. However, when you're looking at paraffin wax is a product that comes from petroleum or gasoline. So that's something that people way back when used to use when they were canning when the refrigerator was not yet introduced into society or invented. So the last two that I've worked with and that I would recommend is soy wax or coconut wax. And the reason being is because soy wax is very common, it's very inexpensive, not as inexpensive as paraffin wax, and I'll go into paraffin wax in a second. But soy wax is probably the most common. And soy wax comes in probably 4 or 5 different varieties. One of them being a soy blend. Now, soy blends can come 2 different ways. It could be combined with another wax to keep it on the spectrum of being natural, which would be soy and coconut or soy and beeswax. And the reason why beeswax is added to soy as a blend is because the beeswax will hold, such as if you're making a pillar candle without a container. Normally, a pillar type of candle is made with paraffin wax. And again, paraffin wax is something I don't recommend working with, and the reason being is because when you burn it indoors, it contaminates the air that you're breathing, that your children are breathing, that anyone else in the house is breathing, and your pets. So I don't recommend using paraffin. However, if you do shop at large scale retailers, big box companies, so on and so forth, you'll see on the back side of the candle or the underside of the candle the list of ingredients. If you see paraffin wax, I don't recommend buying it. And these companies do include Bath and Body Works and also um, what is the other one? Yankee Candle. There we go. So that being said, just watch what you purchase. And I believe, at least in my point of view, this is the reason why a lot of people are making candles themselves and selling them. I use personally a combination of soy and coconut wax blend that I blend here in my home. And the reason being is because when you're using a blended wax, you can purchase one blended based on a manufacturer, but it may not give you the results that you're looking for. So you can purchase them individually and mix them yourself, which is what I do recommend doing, because when you do this, you have complete control over the product that you're producing. However, it does take a lot of time and effort to figure out what temperature you should be using your wax for the melting point to where it becomes a liquid from a solid, and then also from a liquid down to the point where you can add your fragrances. And I'll go into fragrances in just a minute too. Now, On the label or box of the manufacturer, based on the wax that you choose, it will have the heat point or melting point, and then also the point of what you're supposed to heat your wax up to, which can range between 170 degrees all the way up to 190 degrees. Some of them are even higher. So when you're using a wax that is pre-manufactured or one that you haven't combined yourself, it's good to follow those instructions on the package. Now, the pour temperature, and when you add a color, if you choose to do so, and or a fragrance, this also comes into play as well. It's actually very scientific, and you have to practice with this in order to come up with a good product that you want to sell or use or give to family, friends, what have you. Um, you always want to add your color before you add your fragrance at a specific temperature, and then add your fragrance after you add your color. And the reason being is because when you add your color after your fragrance, the molecules in the wax are expanded to absorb. And if they absorb color, they may not have enough room to absorb the fragrance and vice versa, depending on when you're pouring your fragrance and color into the candles. So you always pour your color in first and then pour your fragrance in second, based on what temperature you feel is good for the wax that you're using. That can be also listed on the manufacturer's instructions. Now, the wick type, which is the second portion of when you're making candles, or the second product that you're going to need, comes in cotton, it can come in wood, and also it can come in a synthetic fiber such as a nylon. Now, I use only cotton wicks because they burn clean. The wood wicks are great if you're looking to produce candles that have a crackle to them, or it sounds like someone is near a fireplace. You can actually hear the wood crackling in the wick. I personally don't like those because those pieces of wood can jump out of the candle onto something and start a fire. So you want to be very careful with that when you're making that decision. The next thing you want to talk about is container type. Now this is a amber colored glass jar that I use for my candle. This is actually my signature. This is the Goddess Aphrodite candle, which is rose, lemon, and a little bit of lavender. I use these containers specifically for my 8-ounce jars, and I also have some for 4-ounce jars. In addition, you can purchase ones that are clear, like this one, and this one is the Essence of Autumn. This one has different fruits and the smell of evergreen. It's very sweet. But also, what you want to do when you purchase your candles is you need to also, on your containers, which they do not come with, is a warning label. And you need to have these warning labels on somewhere on your candles. That is actually something that is regulated by the FDA and also the Safety Commission from the United States government. So you want to keep in mind that you have to have those labels. I purchased mine from Amazon, and with Amazon, you're able to order a roll of like 500 for $7, $10. It's not expensive. The next thing that you want to consider would be within the container type is, are you going to pick glass? Are you going to pick metal? Are you going to pick plastic, which is not recommended? And also there's some companies that make wood or bamboo. Now, with the wicks and the container combination, if your container is metal, of course, what's going to happen is the wax is going to disperse faster in that candle because of the flame on the candle is going to heat the metal container itself, and therefore is going to release the wax and your fragrances faster. So that can lead to, I don't want to say a bad product, but a product that needs less than what you expected to have when you started off. When you're looking at different wax types and the wicks, the Goddess Aphrodite candle actually is made with a soy, which is one of my earlier candles, and as you can see inside, there is some sediment around the candle itself, and that is from the soy wax. being used only without coconut. When I decided to go with a coconut and soy blend that I make myself, you can see that it does burn very clean around the edges and it doesn't waste any wax. So that's something else to consider in addition to the containers that you're choosing and the wax types that you're going to be using as well. As far as the fragrance is concerned, that will be our next topic. And the fragrances you can choose from would be synthetic fragrances, natural fragrances such as essential oils, and then also a diffuser oil. Now, diffuser oils, as you probably can see by the manufacturer's instructions and recommendations, is not to use them in candles. It's all supposed to be used and made for a diffuser type of product. So be aware of that. If you go to a big box store and you see little bottles of fragrances and like, ooh, I can use this in my candles, please don't. Read the labels on them. Make sure they are able to be used in a candle. And as a matter of fact, some of those fragrances do contain parabens. They contain things that are not natural and they're not good to breathe in. The synthetic type of fragrances, in my opinion, happen to be the best. And synthetic doesn't mean it's not natural in general. It means that essential oils have been added to a carrier oil or a natural item, such as a flower, a spice, um, a leaf of spices that you may have in your cabinets in your kitchen. Those have been added to a carrier oil to extract the oils from the plant or flower or fruit or what have you into the oil. And then you can use that as your oil in your candles. So that's the one I usually use. And the ones I use don't contain any parabens or any type of additional type of um, just products that aren't good to breathe in. I've been dealing with one company for so many years, and unfortunately, I've used others and I regret it. So make sure that you read up on what you're going to be using in your candles and what they put in their products before you purchase. Essential oils, as far as using that as a fragrance, there's two downsides to using essential oils, even though they smell so good and they're wonderful products as far as if you're going to go ahead and dilute them in a carrier oil, just like a manufacturer would. Some people are actually allergic to some essential oils, and some of them are quite dangerous to use. So you want to keep that in mind as well. As far as essential oils and candles directly, what happens is the essential oil will just disperse based on the heat, or the worst can happen, which is because essential oils, some of them are flammable. Unfortunately, when you mix them in the wax and the wax molecules absorb the scent, then when you have your candle complete as your finished product and you give it to somebody or you're using it in your home or if you're selling candles, what may happen is either number one, there's hardly any scent when they burn the candle, but there's what's called a cold throw and a hot throw. A cold throw is when you open a candle when it's not lit and you smell it. That would be your cold throw. Your hot throw is when you're lighting the candle and it's burned for a certain period of time and the fragrance is supposed to come through. Well, with essential oils, again, one of two things can happen. You'll smell the essential oils on the cold throw, but when you light the candle, you're not going to barely smell anything at all. And the reason for this is because the essential oils have a tendency to float up to the top of the wax instead of being absorbed within the molecules of the wax itself. The second one is quite dangerous, and as I mentioned, the essential oils can actually rise up to the top of your wax. So after you lit your candle and it's been sitting for maybe half hour to an hour, you may hear this pop and you may have a little bit of a explosion. That is the essential oil catching fire inside of the wax. I do not recommend essential oils. I do not use them unless they are diluted with a carrier oil, which I buy quote unquote synthetic that are made with the essential oils from a very reputable manufacturer. So that's something to consider when you're considering the oils and fragrances. As far as setting times for wax, that is another thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration. Is once you've heated your wax to the temperature based on the manufacturer or your own scientific method of what you should reach it to, it has to cool. So then it has to cool by the way of room temperature down to a temperature where you can add your colors and or essential oils, and or your fragrances. When you do this, you then have to pour the wax at a third temperature or fourth temperature if you're using color into your vessel of your choosing. Now, when you pour the wax into the vessel of your choosing, it is recommended from a lot of people that make these candles for a living is to heat up your jars slowly inside of an oven. I personally don't do this. I go with another method. But after you pour your candles, you then have to wait up to 5 hours for the candle to set without the lid on top of it, and then you can cut your wick. Now, some people will go ahead and leave their candles out for 2 to 3 days without the lid in order for it to completely set. I don't do that. I actually put my lid on after I cut the wick and I let it set that way. After the 2 to 3 day time frame, I open up the candle, and sometimes there's this called frosting on the top, which is air bubbles, and it looks like kind of like a frosting on, like a frosted glass, if you would, if ice were on your windshield, if you live up north. But that's something you want to consider is you have to buy a heat gun or have a high-powered air dryer in order to get rid of those bubbles and the frosting around the candle if you're not heating up your jars. Now, I prefer to do it that way because with some of my candles, I create an ombre effect, as you can see, on the candle, which is done after the candle has rested and it is completely set. If you're adding color directly to your wax when it is cooling, then you don't have to take this additional step. But you can see some of the frosting around the side. That was intentional because the way that I put the color in, the color was pushed down to the sides because the bottom is almost completely white. So that's another way that you can set, and also some things you have to take into consideration when you're setting your candles. Again, after the 2 to 3 day time frame, I'll take the lid off. I'll look to see if there's any bubbles. Usually there isn't, but sometimes there is. Just take the heat gun and get rid of those bubbles, and then I also heat up the sides a little bit, and that takes the frosting away from the glass on the outside because there can be an air gap between the glass of the container and the actual wax on the inside. So that releases the air bubbles from that point too. Labels, that's another thing you have to consider when you are making candles as well. If you do not have a thermal printer, and I just learned this very recently, a thermal printer will not use ink, and that is a blessing because I've gone through a couple $100 over the past year and a half on ink with my regular jet printer, and it's really expensive. And it makes you a little angry when you run out of ink and you don't realize it. So you want to keep that in mind too. The thermal printer, they run about $100, and you can buy uh, thermal labels in many different sizes and so on and so forth for your candles if you like to make them. I don't think I have one here. These are my older candles. No, these are all ink. Okay. But another good thing about it is with the thermal printed candle labels, they don't smudge. So, like for me, what I do when I'm selling my candles, especially at an event, and everybody is touching them left and right, and of course, with the flu virus going around, cold virus going around, COVID, all of that, I like to wipe my candles on the outside with 70% alcohol, just to keep it fresh and keep people safe. So even when I mail my candles out, I clean them just to make sure I wasn't sick or I didn't have a cold or I didn't have anything going on at the start of something, so nobody gets sick when they open my box and they pick up the candles. They're actually wiped with alcohol before I put them in the box for shipping. Now, the 3 to 5 day process for the minimum setting time is pretty standard, and that should be taken into consideration before you start burning the candle. Um, in most cases, before you ship the candle, if you're shipping it somewhere. So 3 days minimum, up to 5 days. Some people let them sit for up to 2 weeks. I've tested this and I've never had a difference in fragrance between 5 days and 2 weeks. So I don't know if that is just a theory that was proven, or if somebody can prove me wrong, please do so in the comments below. Another thing that you have to consider is if you're going to start this as a small business, you have to consider your packing, your boxes, the cost for shipping, shipping tape, all of that, your containers, so on and so forth. And it can become quite expensive. And there's a lot of different small business candle makers that will sell their candles as high end with a price that I cannot get myself to I don't want to cheat somebody, but really, I mean, it's not the best thing. For me, it's all ethics. As far as that's concerned, I have a shipping rate which is flat on my website, and that is $10 plus 50 cents per item that is going to be in that package. So I always use UPS, USPS, and FedEx. USPS is the United States Postal Service, have the flat rate shipping, and that flat rate shipping includes insurance. So I always use that as a method of shipping if I can, um, even with my own boxes. So if you order, taking this into consideration, if you order one candle, that is going to cost almost $16 to send one candle, because I have one size box that I use for up to 3 candles. And, or yeah, 1 to 3 candles actually. And that being said, it digs into the price of the candle itself. And the shipping usually is what turns most customers off if you're selling online, especially on your own website. So I keep it at the flat rate across the board, whether I'm selling jewelry, I'm selling candles, if I'm selling anything, it's always $10 plus 50 cents per item. And even though I'm not making back the amount from the shipping, I get the peace of mind knowing that my shipment is secured from insurance in case something does happen. Um, I really don't like charging people the entire amount for shipping because, again, it scares people away. And that's another thing that you have to take into consideration is your shipping is going to eat into your profit as far as making candles are concerned. Now, as far as the price for candles, I've seen people charge an obscene, obscene amount of money for premium candles. Now, I call my candles premium eco-friendly because they are based on the product that I use to make them. You can call it whatever you want to. Call it whatever you want to. But I can't charge 200 to 300% on top of what it costs me to make these candles and feel good about it. So keep that in mind when you are pricing your candles. Just go down each item that you purchased and break it down per candle or per batch, and then divide it by the number of candles that go into that batch. and then figure what percentage you're going to charge over that in order for you to make a profit to continue your business from this point going forward, and ongoing, obviously. One thing that I do recommend after you have shipped the product is going back and making sure that the product was delivered, because you have that tracking number. You can go in and check it, and once you make sure the package is delivered, go ahead and follow up with an email or a text message or a Facebook message or however they purchased, and just make sure everything arrived safely and as expected. The last thing is I use MailChimp to tell clients and people about my products when there's something new coming out, or I have a sale, or what have you. It's good to know that for $13 a month, I can send out 1,000 emails to an email list that I have acquired from my spiritofTwilight.com website. And that's something that you own and you can control and you can manage, which is fantastic for business. Because if you are using, let's say, a third-party platform such as Etsy, now I use Squarespace, and mind you, MailChimp and Squarespace, they're not in any way, shape, or form a sponsor of this video, but they can choose to be if they like to. I don't like to use Etsy. I've used eBay, I've used Amazon. They're all great, but unless if you follow their specifics based on how they list their products, and some of them require UPC, Universal Product Code, it's very difficult to get your product in front of their audience. So keep that in mind. That's the reason why I don't sell on them anymore. Etsy, I don't like Etsy at all. I've used them for about 6 months, and unfortunately, they can and will take away up to 18% of your bottom line once you sell a product. And the reason for this is because they charge you a fee for listing, they charge you a fee to accept a credit card, they charge you a fee for a final value fee like eBay does. In addition, if they promote your product based on a search, such as Google or Bing or whatever, and that customer or that client of yours go ahead and purchases the product from that link, they take an additional percentage. So they can take up to 18% of the whole from your bottom line. That's, to me, unethical. So I won't use them anymore. Now, also, Etsy has a habit of holding your funds for no reason. They've done it to me twice, and that was the last straw. Honestly, that was the last straw. So instead of raising your prices to sell on the additional third-party applications, which are very popular and very well known based on the audience that they get the products out to, sell them on your website and promote yourself, because you're in business for yourself, and that's the bottom line. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, please go ahead and put them down below. I will read them. I can't promise that I will respond to all of them, but I will certainly read them and respond to them accordingly. In addition, if you liked this video, this is my first candle video, please go ahead and click on like, subscribe, and share, just so other people who may be interested in seeing or hearing about how to make their own candles and what the process is and the time frame and the products that I presented to you today, please feel free to do so. And I will see you in the next video. I hope you all take care. Bye-bye.